For most people, the name Sun Tzu is associated with battlefields, generals, and strategy quotes shared all over social media. In the business world especially, he is quoted constantly. But here's the interesting part. Most of the people quoting him have never actually read him. Because when you truly read The Art of War, a very different picture appears. Sun Tzu wasn't obsessed with winning battles. He was obsessed with avoiding them. What interested him wasn't glory, honor, or heroism. What interested him was cost. And in a world that was exhausting itself through endless wars, Sun Tzu became one of the first thinkers to say something deeply uncomfortable out loud. For a state, the greatest danger is often not the enemy in front of it. The real danger is the bill that arrives after the war. Most people think The Art of War is about fighting, but the book is actually about something slightly different. In many ways, it's about economics. To understand this, you need to look at the time Sun Tzu lived in. In the 6th and 5th centuries BCE, China was divided into competing kingdoms. Each state believed it could defeat the others and unify the world. But that ambition came with a price. Va. And these wars almost never stopped. Armies grew larger every year. In earlier times, conflicts were often limited clashes between aristocrats fighting from chariots. But that world was disappearing. Massive infantry armies were emerging. And that meant more food, more weapons, more taxes, more logistics. When a king sent his army into the field, what he was really doing was this: borrowing from his own future. And very often, that debt could not be repaid. In the West, ancient wars are often told as heroic stories. But in reality, the hardest part of war in that period wasn't fighting. It was paying for it. The moment an army began to move, the cost began to rise. Wagons, grain, horses, blacksmiths, cooks, armorers, porters, all of them had to be fed and supplied. A campaign lasting only a few months could bankrupt a small state. A campaign lasting a year could bring down even a powerful one. And yet, states kept fighting anyway. Because if you didn't fight, your neighbor would grow stronger. In modern terms, this was essentially an arms race. And the entire system was slowly starting to crack. It was in this world that Sun Tzu appeared. But thinking of him only as a philosopher would be misleading. In many ways, he was closer to a risk analyst. He looked at the numbers. He examined the costs. He studied logistics. And he realized something crucial. The way states were conducting war was not sustainable. Even if you won a war, the victory meant nothing if your treasury collapsed afterward. Most rulers believed their greatest threat was the enemy army. Sun Tzu believed something else. He believed the real threat was their own spending. That's why one of the most important lines in The Art of War appears right at the beginning. Sun Tzu writes, "War is of vital importance to the state." The word vital here doesn't mean glorious or heroic. It means something else. Dangerous, disruptive, and capable of destroying the very society it claims to protect if handled poorly. The rest of the book essentially revolves around one idea: keep war short, controlled, and as inexpensive as possible. One of Sun Tzu's most famous lines says, "The greatest victory is the one achieved without fighting." This is often interpreted as mystical wisdom, but it's actually much simpler. What the line really means is, the cheapest victory is the one that avoids battle altogether. No nation truly benefits from prolonged warfare, because the longer a war lasts, the more it drains not only soldiers but also economies. That's why Sun Tzu constantly emphasizes speed, intelligence, deception, psychological pressure, because all of these are cheaper than armies. Sun Tzu's goal was never to win more battles. His goal was to prevent states from bankrupting themselves through war. When you read the book with this perspective, you start to notice something interesting. The Art of War doesn't read like poetry. It reads more like an accounting ledger. Sun Tzu is constantly calculating cost. In the sections discussing how to feed an army, he explains something very straightforward. The farther an army moves from home, the more expensive it becomes. Transporting supplies can cost more than paying soldiers. Long campaigns don't just empty the treasury. They also pull farmers away from their fields. and that weakens the economy even further. This is why Sun Tzu had a very clear belief. Logistics does not support strategy. Logistics is strategy. His thinking about intelligence follows the same logic. According to Sun Tzu, a single spy can sometimes be more valuable than an entire army, because accurate information can prevent a nation from marching into the wrong war. And the wrong war can waste enormous amounts of resources. Today we call this data. Sun Tzu called it foreknowledge. But the logic is the same. Information is the cheapest and most powerful weapon in war. Perhaps the greatest lesson Sun Tzu offers is this. War itself is not the problem, but wasteful war is a disaster. The best generals are not the ones who win the most battles. The best generals are the ones who prevent unnecessary wars. That's why Sun Tzu's thinking still matters today. Modern wars are not decided only on battlefields. Economies, debt, supply chains, and industrial capacity all play a role. Nations often lose not on the battlefield, but in their budgets. Sun Tzu understood this 2,500 years ago. For him, power was not simply the ability to strike. Real power was something else. It was not about how much war you could fight. It was about how much war you could afford. And history shows the same pattern again and again. Even the strongest nations sometimes don't lose wars on the battlefield. They lose them in the cost of fighting them.